I want to invite up my partner in Europe and friend for many years, our head of European operations, Vincent Belliveau. Thank you, Vincent.
Thank you. Wow, this is great. Good morning, everyone. Good level of energy today. That's a lot to absorb, right? Adam always has a lot of content that's extremely meaningful, and I really, really appreciate how he ensures it's fully relevant for Europe, taking statistics for Europe, really understanding Europe. We will be announcing tomorrow he's earning a CEO of the Year award in HR technology again, and I largely think it's his global mindset and global thinking that really makes a difference. Just to introduce myself, I run Europe for Cornerstone. I actually started here at Cornerstone 11 years ago, or 11 years and a half, and launched a European geography for Cornerstone together with the team, many of which are here. The team has grown very largely, like the audience has grown as well. The first round table we had was literally a round table, and it was one table of European clients, and now here we are. The audience today is 38% larger than it was last year. 38%. So thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today and tomorrow. And we really hope the show will be amazing for all of you. I know the team has been working very, very hard in making sure that we have the right mix of client speakers, partner speakers, experts from Cornerstone, and a right mix of networking, technology, HR practitioners, learning, etc. We try to mix it all up so you all find, relevant content for all of you. But I'm here to talk in a few words about our momentum in Europe, to illustrate that what Adam just described actually resonates heavily across the client audience that I interact with. I speak to many CHROs, to many CIOs, and a lot of what I hear actually relates very, very well with that. Very soon I'll have clients come on stage and describe that, but let me say a few words about how Cornerstone has grown in Europe. Thanks to you, thanks to the success that you've been able to have, and your support and your partnership over the years. I've been told to wait a few minutes until the animation grows to illustrate the growth that we've been having here. So let's talk about some statistics. We now have more than 10 million users in the EMEA geography. If you look over a period of 3 years, that's 60% growth. So some of you who were clients with us and were in this room before have observed the phenomenal growth there. If you look at from a client-based standpoint, we now have more than 770 clients. That's 23% more than just 1 year ago, so when we had the same conference last year. What I'm very proud of also is the adoption across Europe, across our product base. And I'll talk about adoption by product in a few minutes, but 80% of our clients use 2 or more products, and actually 50% use 3 or more. It's actually more than in the rest of the world for Cornerstone. There's a stronger adoption across the product base here in Europe. And I'll talk about some of the reasons why in a few minutes. But let's double click on some of those specific products. So recruiting has been one of our most successful product introduction. We launched recruiting in 2010. Just 2 years ago, we had 20% penetration across our client base, which is growing very fast. Now it's 30%. So it's 50% increase in penetration across our client base. That's very, very fast growth in this area. And we think, given the skills divide, also given the landscape of HR technology out there, that recruiting will be one area will grow very, very significantly. Learning remains at our core. You'll see we organize 2 panels of clients, one on HCM and Unified Talent Management overall, and one on learning, because I think it reflects our client base very well. One analyst yesterday told me, well, Vincent, you guys are like the LMS of all the ERP vendors and of Cornerstone. And that's one way to look at it, which I find is relatively accurate around looking at the market space. And we continue our growth here, having tripled the number of clients over the last 5 years. But performance is also an area that European clients are investing into deeply. We had a number of sessions at prior Convergence events around a hackathon of doing modern performance management. How do you embed kind of more regular feedback and check-ins together within a process whereby most European companies are not doing away with the annual review. It's actually staying there. But it needs to be combined with a lot more real-time feedback. And we have twice as much clients using performance now in Europe than we had just 2 years ago. And Adam mentioned our HR suite. That is the fastest product introduction we've ever had. We have 100% growth in clients. We now have more than 130 clients in the world. And those clients are largely here in Europe. And I'll explain a little bit about why in a few seconds. One area I'm super pleased of, I want to thank the content team for that, for all the work they've done. Adam announced earlier, we just introduced 4 new packages entirely driven by Europe. Content Anytime France, Content Anytime Germany, Content Anytime Spain, as well as Content Anytime Digital Transformation. Our team has done a big investment in understanding the requirements across Europe and building the partnerships in the geographies to the point where right now we have 50%, actually more than 50% of all the clients for Content Anytime here in this room in the EMEA community. So with that, we end in a place where we have physical presence with teams in 16 countries in EMEA, and then we leverage a network of more than 10 reseller partners in various geographies where we are not present physically, such as South Africa or Middle East, in Eastern Europe as well, etc. But as Adam outlined, and I don't want to repeat what he's outlined, client success is fundamental. I view my job as making sure my clients are successful, and then the rest of our mission will accomplish itself, really. If you're all successful, we will continue to grow, we'll continue to have more clients buying more of our solutions, and we'll expand the partnership that we have with all of you. And we've been investing in client success in many areas. One of them has been building the client success team, so there's the CSM teams. Many of you work with CSMs, client success managers, and we continue to hire in this area. We've been investing in global product support, so there's a big transformation that Adam described that's underway right now that will lead to massive improvements that comes with extra headcount as well. So it's technology, people, process, it's the full transformation. We're also investing in account management, so growing the team of people that support you. Those are real investment, very, very concrete. But beyond that, we've realized we needed to be more multilingual. We had, a number of the people here are from the UK, so that may be less of an issue for yourselves, but we had a lot of our events, our programs that we were running in English, and we've multiplied, of course, the sessions we do, like office hours that we've introduced to support our clients in English, but we've massively multiplied those done in Italian, in Spanish, in German, in French, to make sure that we really get to the audience and those specific administrators and business process owners who need the support in local language. And we'll keep expanding on that. Same with the notion of Success Live. If you're familiar with the Success Live sessions, I strongly encourage you to join them. They're focused on a specific topic in each geography. We've multiplied by 4 those done in multilingual clients, in multilingual settings. When I joined, my big thing was to convince Adam to open a data center in Europe. That was a really, really big thing to do, super, super expensive. We were a tiny startup back then, and Adam believed in the mission and said, yeah, we're going to do it, and we went ahead and did it. Over the last year, we've invested thousands of hours to do something that allows us to respond to the preoccupations that many of your IT departments have, and many of your executives actually have, which was to launch our data centers in continental Europe as well. So we now have data centers in Paris and in London, in addition, and in Frankfurt, in addition to our historical data center in London. That's been a tremendous effort from our technical teams. A lot of hours have been invested in there, and we're very pleased to, reassure our clients that we can host their data locally, very close to their home, if you will. Gives a lot more option to our clients across EMEA. And we've already seen a number of clients, new clients, select those data centers, or existing clients ask for migrations to be scheduled, sometimes in a timeline that's aligned with Brexit as well. There's been a big focus on GDPR. over the last year. We've invested significantly. Some of you might know, someone that used to be in my team, Jose Rodriguez, is now actually reporting to our Chief Counsel Officer globally. So Jose Rodriguez is based in France, and he has a team of experts who assist our clients in navigating through the not so simple kind of legal system around the GDPR. It's not that simple. And we've invested in functionality. We've made sure that our data centers, of course, meet those requirements. We've invested in people, and we spend a lot of time with user groups and other dimensions, working with our clients to make sure they are compliant. We think we have unique expertise in this area. I encourage you to walk out and meet them during the breaks. Jose and his team are here and can help on this front. We think it's something that's very important for our European clients, and I know for a fact that we're doing it in a very differentiated way for all of you. But really, when working with us, of course, client experience is pivotal. Of course, you want us to be compliant and have the best-in-class capabilities, but you're really, really interested in what's in the product. And one thing I've been very pleased over the years is to have the support of Adam, of the product management team that will be on stage tomorrow to talk about the roadmap, and really listen to our European clients. We have another global promotion. Josie Dwyer used to be in my team and now is global director of field product management, is listening to the requirements of our clients across Europe and embedding those features in the global product to make sure that the product is really relevant for a French client, it's relevant for a German client, it's relevant for a Spanish client, it's relevant for a Swedish client, it's relevant for a Swiss client, etc. That we onboard the best features and ideas from the clients across the markets. And one thing that we've noticed is on many, many areas, and hopefully we'll talk about that in a few minutes, we all find, not just me, European clients can be more advanced than their peers in APAC or in the United States. A lot of the best practices in talent management and learning, in human capital management actually come from Europe, in part due to the complexity over here. So with our growth, with our transformation, we've realized that we can't do everything ourselves, and over time we've built up our alliance network, and I just want to give a shout out to all our partners. We've been working really, really hard to expand our connections to other organizations. We talked about content already. I won't dwell in there, but there's a lot of effort done to go and find the relevant content vendors in each of the geographies. If you know of great content vendors, please let us know. I can't guarantee we'll onboard them in our program because we have a prioritization effort, but we all really welcome your feedback. We want to know what's the best out there, how we can incorporate that in our programs. Same with the technology vendors. You want an open technology. I hear that time and time again. You expect from us to embed the latest and greatest features of everything. However, you know that there's always going to be a niche vendor, an area that's peripheral to what Cornerstone does around learning, around recruiting, around performance, around HR, that you'll want us to integrate with. So Mark Golden is running a few sessions with his team. He's our CTO. He'll talk about how we're building this open approach, API-first approach, so that we can integrate with technology partners ever more. It's part of our strategy. There's a lot of vendors out there that we, over time, aim to facilitate integration with. Many of you in learning will know about the XAPIs and the global catalog integration API, etc. We're doing a lot to facilitate that integration, which again in the European market is probably even compounded as a problem because there's a vendors per market, challenge, per geography. And then over the last year, we went through a very important transformation that was meaningful for our clients, whereby, except for the mid-market, the more predictable implementations where we've kept this notion of a service-inclusive model. For the enterprise clients, we've now decided to exit the business of doing actual implementation projects, and we've asked delivery partners to deliver those projects for you. This was a request largely from our clients because clients wanted more choice, wanted to have more resources available, wanted to have more value-added services that Cornerstone could not offer. And we went ahead and recruited partners. We had a number of them already doing projects for us as subcontractors, but now they went ahead and became prime contractors for you, delivering projects around recruiting, around learning, around performance, around HR or rollouts or technical projects, for instance. And it's been a huge focus for us. Philippe Audebert, my VP of Client Success, spent a lot of time with his entire team working and putting in place strong delivery assurance, making sure that the partners deliver correctly and deliver value for you. There's also a strong partner services organization that measures the success of the partners, so we can confidently advise you on which partners to work with, giving you options. We have the service delivery advisors. That's the role of advisor, to help you select the right partner to work with. We also put in place what we call a black belt team. So we keep a lot of expertise internally to help you when it's needed, or to help the partners with cutting edge areas or very, very specific dimensions. So we've invested a lot in making sure that this transition is successful and as effective as possible. We realize that we're right in the middle of that transformation, and we're working to address any finalization area around that transition of model, but we think it makes a big difference to our clients, provide many more options. One of the complaints I had like 2-3 years ago was, well, Vincent, your team is too tight. We need more resources. Well, now I'm pleased to report that we have more than 500 certified consultants out there from these many organizations, which really make a big difference to the capacity available for all our clients to deliver projects. But you heard from us about the skills divide. You heard from Adam, from myself. Very soon I'll ask for a panel to come on stage, and I decided to actually split the panel in two, if you will, to focus on the one hand side on the broader issues of human capital management, which include learning and unified talent management, and then a second panel to focus on the learning business and the learning and development challenges in the world. But let me say a few words about learning. Essentially, about human capital management, sorry. Essentially, everything that Adam describes applies in Europe, but it's sort of compounded in our world. Because we have that fragmentation in culture, that fragmentation in laws, so compliance is different in different geographies, and that fragmentation in IT systems. And by that, for HCM, one of the main areas is payroll. There doesn't exist yet the perfect solution for one payroll system worldwide. You need to have, most companies have several payroll systems across all markets. That's a big difference with the United States. Therefore, there's a strong requirement to have us help you get that single version of the truth. We also have compounded by the geographies and the experiences across markets, an even more disjointed experience for the employee. Because, again, there's multiple systems per geography sometimes, and one of the requests, one way to impact the employee experience is really to have one unified talent experience. Many of my clients tell me that's pragmatic, that I can touch, I can make a difference very fast, and that I can unify across the geographies. And digital transformation, I guess it's a topic for every company in the world, but in Europe, it's top of mind of every executive we talk to. I've discussed this with my peers in the US. It's not necessarily as much of the top topic in their conversations when they discuss it. Whilst in Europe, every single meeting I have talks about some form of digital transformation taking place. And the transformation agenda comes with a really strong sense of urgency. I can't name, I can't list out the number of clients I meet who tell me, I need this yesterday. There's so much pressure in the business. They want it to be faster and faster and faster. It needs to happen right now. And we think that a talent-driven approach to HCM is much more pragmatic. Rather than going and trying to rip and replace a lot of local systems, let's integrate with those payroll systems that are already in place, leave the complexity of admin in the local systems, and focus on the transformational aspect of HCM, the talent management, the learning and development, and those aspects. So with that, I would like to ask for the first panel to come on stage. I'm really privileged to have today 4 individuals from 4 organizations who will talk about these issues with me over the next 20 minutes. I'd like to welcome Barbara, Daniela, Sophie, as well as, I'm sorry, I have a blank, Jan. Thank you. Please join us.
I have your cheat sheet for you. Hello.
Thank you so much. I'm very pleased to have all of you on stage because what you all are doing is very impressive in very different ways. We selected panels that would be on purpose representing a variety of industries, of geographies, of even job roles, so that we would make this relevant for everyone in the audience. So Barbara, let's start with Cognita, and one of the reasons I think I wanted to start with yourself is because we just talked about the skills divide. Yes, it impacts everyone here in this room, and it impacts our employees, but to me it impacts first and foremost my kids, everyone's kids here, the youth that will be tomorrow's people, and therefore with your network of schools, I think you're well positioned to talk about this challenge. Can you share, first of all, introduce yourself, and then share how, what Adam described today, translates into your world, and how that you've translated that into an HR strategy?
Great, thank you. Good morning. So I'm Barbara. I'm the HR director for Cognita in Europe. Across the globe, we have about 70 schools and growing. We have nearly 40,000 children in our care, from nursery all the way up to international baccalaureate. Some of our schools are tiny, some of them are very big. So some of the challenges that we're looking at from a people perspective is, how do you prepare the next generation for what's coming? And one of the critical challenges we see is, how do you make sure that our children are ready for what the future holds? I'm not sure the education system always does that and always helps them with that. One of the things you and I have previously spoken about is this notion of, with all the digitization, how do you not lose the human factor? How can you have a conversation beyond emojis and lols? And so how do you retain the human element in all the digitization? That's certainly something that we're looking at.
Very good. In terms of how that translates into your HR strategy, what plans or what major impacts has that had?
So technology obviously played a key role, which is why we're here today. So the introduction of Cornerstone was a milestone for Cognita. It was the first time Cognita ever had a truly global technology solution that enabled us to connect with everybody across the globe. We've only been live for about 8 weeks, but we're seeing some great uptake. We're seeing incredible positivity. And some of the tools within Cornerstone have really helped us is, first and foremost, connect, the creation of communities, and teachers across the globe being able to talk to one another via those communities to share ideas, passions, etc. And core HR as a single source of truth. It's always fascinating when an organization discovers just how many people work for you. You kind of start off with, we think it's about 6,000, and then you end up with 10,000 user records in your system. And that's quite an eye-opener.
That's a big difference.
It's massive. It's absolutely massive. And I think oftentimes the contractor staff, for example, fall by the wayside. In education, you have a lot of so-called peri staff. So those might be your music teachers who only work in a school a few hours a week. But they work in our schools. We have to know who they are, where they work, where they live, how much we pay them. And for the first time, we have that global holistic overview, which is really quite eye-opening.
Very good. Well, congratulations on that first
you.
achievement. We'll mix it up a little bit. So, Jan, let's talk about Proximus. I found it fascinating, the transformation you're undergoing, because, correct me if those are not the exact words, but from my understanding, you're going through a transformation, moving from a telco business to a digital service provider, and therefore I think a lot of what we discussed earlier would apply to you, and if you can introduce yourself along the way as well.
Thank you, Vincent. So, indeed, Proximus is a former incumbent telco provider, around 14,000 people, Benelux, moving really into a digital service provider. I'm heading the HR role there. But we have a tremendous challenge, and a lot of the things which were on stage here really apply. It's really on a culture side and also on the talent side. Is imagine yourself, people who are used to provide voice services, maybe mobile, but providing today, customer-centric ICT services, digital services, from a skill set. This is a really huge disruption. And there is no choice, I would say. You cannot find all those people, and you cannot create a social legacy, but taking all those people with you on, or the maximum on that digital journey, requires really a good foundation on the talent side, and that's where we picked Cornerstone to find a partner where we could tap into some common and collective intelligence, and have a kind of a global, holistic view on that journey, and to manage that in a proper way. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. And we had talked about a project called New Tone, which I find is fascinating, and maybe a best practice that the whole audience would find very interesting. Do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Let me share it. I think you talk about or I think you talked about the 5%. We said, well, let's create what we call Newton, with a reference to Newton. So people have the freedom to post missions on the site, the job site, the internal job site, and people really have the freedom to apply and to spend short-term missions, 2 to 3 months, 1 day a week, where they can learn, where they can experience other jobs, in order to improve, foster that mobility, because there is a lot of barriers to move into other territories. So we wanted to lower the barrier as much as possible and offer everybody the opportunity to learn, to taste from some other jobs within those Newton missions.
No, that's phenomenal. So just to spend a second on this one, this is the idea that not only do you have kind of an internal job board for a permanent job in the future, but you can also have a job board for small experiences. And so you will, small missions, and you communicate. It solves two problems. I have a million mission I could give to anyone in my team for very specific things for a period of time, right, for specific programs. But it also solves the other side of the mission, which is changing the culture of their employees and getting them to develop new capabilities, develop new interests, and possibly becoming more responsible for developing their career and developing interest in other areas. So you solve sort of two areas, and then you drive engagement in the end, right?
One of the challenges is really to make people accountable and become self-driven on mastering, developing their skills. And that's one of the ways we try to tackle it. But I think there are other ways, and looking forward also to have a bit more smartness, intelligent in combining different data and nudging people to the next step in terms of learning. So, yeah.
Great. Sophie, I was very impressed with this concept of the triangle of leanification that you describe in a context of really, really high growth. So it's growth with discipline, if you will, and with scaling. Can you describe, first of all, introduce yourself and describe how what we've described today or discussed today impacts your organization as well, and how that translated into your HR strategies?
Indeed. So we are a company, a microelectronic company across the globe. We are more or less 1,500 people today, and let's say in the last 5 years we have been growing more or less 20% each year. So for us, the big challenge in the company and within HR, it is how do we manage that growth? And the highest impact is in automation and in leanification of our processes. And when you say the triangle, it's indeed the main focus that we have is not only leanification of processes and ensuring that we can speed up the automation, because I heard about the urgency, the sense of urgency is there. It is also about consolidation of the data and unification of applications. So it's really the three elements that are for us important to ensure that we put in place an architecture where the business can focus on the business, and we can enable them to do that through setting the right architecture on these three elements.
That's fascinating. And Daniela, if you can also introduce yourself in a second and describe how at Coca-Cola Hellenic, a very, very fast-growing bottling company, I think you're top 3 in the world, right, in terms of Coca-Cola bottling companies, how the HR mission has been impacted by the changes we just described, and how that's turned into your strategy.
Indeed, Vincent, Coca-Cola HBC is one of the largest Coca-Cola bottlers in the world. We operate across 28 countries on 3 continents. And one thing, as 30,000 employees, we're extremely proud that Dow Jones Sustainability Indexes have recognized us for global beverage leadership in sustainability. So where the story starts for us, in fact, we all remember the period of unprecedented turmoil in Europe between 2009 and 2015, where we as a company needed to prove the commitment and the strength of our employees. In 2015, we started rewriting our growth story. We started growing again. And we knew that we need to approach it differently. A growth story requires a growth mindset, and it needs to invite growth behaviors. And this is when we started, writing and preparing our growth story case for technology, because it has been identified as a major enabler. In 2016, we went about decision, and we purchased the full suite of Cornerstone, preparing an aggressive 12-month deployment of the modules we have purchased. Our first baby arrived in April last year with the talent acquisition module. What is important for us? We're not just looking to replace, to upgrade our technology platform. What the business have requested from the HR function, and speed and a different quality output. 3 things were on the agenda. How we enable our business people, sales developers, managers, spend more time on the market. How do we enable highly performing teams, achieving results faster and grabbing business opportunity quicker? And finally, how do we ensure talent growth in a sustainable way? Difficult task. And I believe we did the right choice. Today, we could say that technology is not only about digitalizing or automating. It is also about inviting mindset and creating space for behaviors which is much beyond productivity improvement. I could speak about probably 3 main value drivers we can share today with you and your clients in the area of digital recruitment through Cornerstone. It created a collaboration space for all the personas impacted, starting from the applicant, a major experience improvement through the deeper LinkedIn integration, very important. Going to the recruiter. As part of the HR transformation, we functionalized our resources.
Yeah, you created centers of excellence, if I recall, right?
And it was very important at the very beginning of the transition journey for the recruiters and the sourcers to give them a tool which will enable them to serve their constituencies, whether it's a recruiting manager or it's an applicant in different parts of the world 24/7. So this is very important to have one integrated collaboration space when all those people are meeting seamlessly. It was important also to provide a tool to the business partners and the talent managers, along with the compensation managers, to participate in the process. A major improvement for us was the managers recruitment dashboard, where on one screen, in a real time, you can present and share dynamic information on all recruitment requisitions.
Right. Okay.
So the journey, it's a journey. We have just started. We're very early learners in this journey, and we hope to evolve more.
Well, thank you, Daniela. It's very impressive. Coming back to you, Barbara, from a sort of tips for the audience and how you've leveraged technology and pragmatically put in place change in your organization and what's coming as well. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Sure. I think pragmatic is the really critical word. So when I took over the Cornerstone project at Cognita, it's a global project, but we're driving it from Europe. The first thing we found is that the core HR module was going to be implemented with about 279 custom fields for every single employee. And we just found the risk management around that alone was too big. So we stripped it right back. We took a much more down-to-earth approach. So rather than addressing everybody's wish list, we said, how do we strip it back? Not quite to minimum viable product, but something that's much more manageable in the first instance. So we went live with about 40 custom fields per person, which gives us a great source of data. We also implemented Learner Home, Connect, and Performance Management. And for us, as a bundle, that works quite well. I'm a second-time Cornerstone client, so in the last organization, we pretty much implemented the same bundle, and I find that works incredibly well. Cognita is in the education business. We're not necessarily a learning organization ourselves, and I think part of what we're trying to do now with relevant learning content focusing on the teachers, but also learning content on well-being, growth mindset, leadership development, is creating a different space for our teachers, but also for our employees across the globe.
Right, I remember you mentioned communities being a big deal in your
The communities are
organization.
critical, so we have a couple of really engaging communities that we've kicked off. One is called Christmas Around the World. So on one day next month, we're going to engage our classrooms across the globe to say, send each other e-cards and let's post them on the communities. We're also looking at a community called Cognita Calling later this month, and the idea is let's have live Skype links across the globe so our students in Hong Kong can talk to their peers somewhere in London. So there's some really engaging things that we're looking at. Performance management is another one that we stripped right back. And I think there was a desire to replicate the paper version online. And I sort of challenged some of those assumptions because that doesn't work. And coming soon are the applicant tracking and onboarding, the partnership with eDays on absence management, and then phase 3, we're going to look at compensation and talent. We're just not quite ready for it yet. We need to put a couple of more foundation stones in place before we can do that.
Great. Well, phenomenal story, Barbara. Sophie, in your environment, we understood your strategy earlier. How does that translate into kind of a technological rollout? How you're leveraging technology to put it in place?
Yeah, I think the two main elements I would like to put forward here is our efforts in acquisition. We heard a lot about the skills divide, and I think it applies also for a company like Melexis, where we are looking for a very niche profiles, very high-skilled people. There, I think the technology enabled us to be present through global approach and a mobile approach, which was added on since last year. I think this is an important achievement. And secondly, I would also like to pick out the speeding up of learning, which we heard by using the services that you provide in learning content, buying external content to speed up the availability of that learning, making people really quicker and more independent in order to make them effective in the organization.
I mentioned urgency earlier, but it sounds like all of you it's really part of your theme. There's an urgency in your organizations too, across all fronts, really.
And I would say, if I would need to share one lessons learned, is that good is good enough, meaning if your solution covers 80% of the requirements, launch it and grow with the system further and improve it later on.
Yeah, don't let perfection be the enemy of good, is what you're suggesting.
The blocker, yeah.
Great tip for the audience. And Jan, in your environment, in terms of putting the strategy into music with technology, can you share some insights?
I think overall as a company we said, well, our big team is shift to digital, a lot of our interactions with customers and so on, but in a really customer-centric way around customer journeys. And I think we need to mirror that with the HR team in terms of employee journeys and become a bit more seamless and less transactional in terms of interacting with our employees. That's one big theme, I think, which is very key, is set that employee experience very central. Is it on the attraction? Is it on the retention? Is it on the onboarding? Is it on the performance management? And second to that, from a more central organizational model moving into a more empowered organizational model, it's not always that easy for HR systems or other systems to enable that. But looking forward with the new technologies, artificial intelligence, chatbot technology and so, enabling that move so we can gain speed and agility will be very key from our perspective.
Right, you have quite a challenge with changing the culture in your organization, coming from a legacy telco into a digital service provider.
For sure. Yeah.
And technology can help, but and will help ever more. But there's a dimension of culture that needs to be impacted. And Daniela, any tip for the audience? Anything you'd like to add?
I was thinking, listening to Adam in the morning, he was speaking about careers. And Coca-Cola HBC recruited me 20 years ago. And listening to Adam, I counted 5 careers in Hellenic for my span of selling proudly Coca-Cola for 20 years. I believe it's important to recruit for careers and not for job. And I believe technology has an important part to play in it. How we designed our technology journey in HR is around the missions every single employee and manager in our organization needs to accomplish, and also putting the employee in the center of the experience. I believe this is a very important change of approach and thinking. And it has not been an easy journey. You know, moving from a classical on-premise solutions to placing all your core HR processing on cloud and something more cloud as a service, it's a challenging journey. So my biggest learning is you need to prepare your internal audiences, starting with your senior team. You need to prepare a very strong change and communication plan, which would be an integral part of your deployment. And
Yeah, we always say at the start of the project, we'll do big change, big communication, but then we're very busy and then we don't do as much. Internally within Cornerstone, we do that sometimes, right? So that's always a key success factor that can't be left aside. It needs to be central to the program.
And there is also one very important learning, and this is where we are trying to really prepare plans for the future. We have learned there is not a single system which will give you everything, which will give you every single internal customer preference and something more. The challenging external audiences, whether it's an applicant, whether it's an investor, how you shape your presence in the digital world externally. So there is not going to be a single vendor that will meet all of your requirements. That's why we're more trying to establish an ecosystem of our digital architecture in HR. And I would say it's not HR. We're not trying to limit HR, but the overall collaboration.
Yes, we're very aligned with that vision of an ecosystem. We feel we want to build as much of the capability within Cornerstone, but there's always new capabilities, new areas around, and we believe in that importance of opening up to the various complementary applications or systems or ecosystem partners that can be part of that that wider ecosystem.
And what we do, Cornerstone, is that through the edge collaboration space, you have provided us with an opportunity to access partners and provide us with services, sometimes very niche, sometimes very fast growing. And at this current stage, we're looking 2 to 3 partners to integrate with our core system, Cornerstone being in the center of it. Right. So I believe this is a learning. I do believe the big word for the future is integration. And we believe at this stage, Cornerstone as a partner is offering and placing this opportunity for us on the table.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like a huge round of applause for our phenomenal panel. Thank you very much. I hope this panel demonstrates that what Adam described in the keynote earlier is actually happening here in Europe and very, very relevant. I will talk a little bit about learning for a few minutes in Europe. So how learning has some nuances that are more specific in Europe. Again, I talked about how the digital transformation is very topical here in Europe and a top priority of the executive agenda. And we find that if there's one lever to make it happen, culture being the main barrier. We did a study with IDC earlier this year, and it's the 3rd year in a row where it concluded that the main barrier to digital transformation is actually culture. And I think the main lever to change culture, there's many others, right? You need executive buy-in, you need communications, you need to create the culture in your business, but one of the main lever is actually learning. A unified learning solution for all of your employees within your business, including your external partners that are involved in delivering your business, so your extended enterprise, makes a huge difference to actually change the culture. And I think that's even more relevant in the European geography. The other piece, and Adam referred to that a little bit, is a proliferation of content. There's more and more content offerings out there. Whether you go on the websites, whether you go through third parties, there's just really, really good content to learn about. There's so much stuff that you need to know to do your job, and it's everywhere. But in Europe, it's even worse because it's compounded by a number of languages, by geographies. And it's compounded also, before I get there, so the answer to that, in our view, is that notion of multilingual curated content, and also the notion of allowing you very powerful search to go and tag all the content in the world used from all our clients around the world and make it available, make you aware that this content is viewed as very relevant by other clients around the world. So we're using machine learning to do that. There's much more coming on that front. But also, the problem is compounded by the different styles in Europe. Go at a learning event in France, in Germany, in Spain, in Italy, in the Nordics, and in the UK, and look at the topics people talk about. 70% of the topics are the same things we're talking about in general, right, skills economy, etc. But 30% of the topics are very, very specific to that market. There are very unique dimensions around how people have learned to learn there, how the government has had impact on how people should learn or they would like the people to learn. There's just a lot of impact of local culture, and it creates different learning styles. And therefore, we really need, and that's what our clients are telling us, and we think we're even more relevant in that context, sort of a holistic learning solution that provides every kind of learning, whether it's mobile, face-to-face, whether it's social, whether it's any other kind of learning video, together with very personalized recommendation. So we're continually investing in our algorithms to make them more and more relevant and make the training recommendations ever more personalized. So we think that those three dimensions really are more specific to Europe and therefore make our solutions even more relevant to European clients. But rather than hearing it from myself and from Adam, we'd like to discuss the topics of learning with our client panel. I'm very pleased to welcome on stage our next panel, the learning panel this time, with Jean-Christophe, Celia, as well as Bart, please. Please join us on stage. I did it on purpose this time.
You're 2 for 2.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for joining us today. We're very pleased to host a panel of organizations which I feel are very progressive in how they think about learning. I thought I'd start perhaps with yourself, Jean-Christophe, as I've been very impressed with your framework of 4 dimensions that you described to me in one of our conversations at Nestlé. Well, first and foremost, can you introduce yourself, perhaps talk about how the discussions we've had so far resonate in the context of the group of Nestlé, and then describe your strategy around learning.
Great, thanks, and good morning, everybody. So my job is, I'm the Chief Talent Officer for Nestlé, and the way we describe our role within the company is opening space for growth, be it when it comes to providing new jobs, be it when it comes to providing learning opportunities, be it when it comes to providing coaching opportunity, leadership development, and so on. It's all about opening space for growth. And obviously, I mean, when you listen to, what we heard this morning from you, from Adam, from the other group, obviously it does resonate, I mean, heavily. 18 months ago, we've been looking at how, from an HR perspective, can we better support the company strategy. And at that time, we identified 3 big themes. One was about what can we do to accelerate speed and innovation to win in market. The second, very close to what we discussed, is about how can we leverage both agility and efficiency at scale. And sometimes it seems to be not possible to reconcile those 2 elements.
I'll pause on the word scale in your context. How many employees in how many countries?
So, I mean, we are present, we do business in every single country in the world. There is still one where we don't do business, it's North Korea. But we may hope that this will happen sometime. And we have 360,000 employees.
360,000 in about 200 countries would be the summary.
When we talk about scale, that's where the issue stands. And obviously, when we look at this is where, in all these strategies, is where learning can play a significant role. And we identify 3 big actions for the coming months and years. One is around digital capabilities. One is around what do we do to increase capabilities in our different categories. As you may know, Nestlé is not only about coffee, it's also about chocolates. But it's also about Maggi, Bouillon Cube. It's also about, there are so many things from healthcare product, to food and beverage. And how do we increase these skills? And also, how do we change mindset? So back to this topic about learning model, we identify 4 ways. And we said, whatever we do in learning has to, be built around these 4 elements. The first one is it has to be experiential. Any learning has to be experiential and has to be linked to a business context. You don't learn out of a context. Yeah. The second element is about being learner-centric. And I think with the solution we heard this morning, there is a lot which has been done from a technology perspective today so that we can accelerate this learning centricity. The third is mobility. This, 360,000 employees, how do you reach anyone, anytime, anywhere? And that's where, having solutions which are really mobile-enabled is clearly significant. And last, we are all under cost pressure. And it's all about how do we make sure that we use kind of Lego approach when we develop learning solution? How do we make sure that we can reuse? I often take the comparison. When you go to, to petrol station and you try to get a coffee. You have a very nice screen and you have options, right? 8, 10, 12, 16 options. And then you open the machine, what do you see? 3 bulk: milk, coffee, chocolate. So how do you make sure that you really build, on critical elements and that you can recompose depending on the learning needs? That's the 4 key pillars, yeah.
Yeah, I found those elements very fascinating. Thank you for sharing this with the audience. Celia, let's talk a little bit about how that takes shape in the environment of Sanofi. So do you want to introduce yourself and perhaps elaborate?
Great, thank you, and good morning, everybody. So I'm Celia Berenguer. I'm the Chief Learning Officer at Sanofi. And I guess a lot of our effort at the moment is around learning transformation. And when Adam kicked off his piece around sort of 3 challenges: compliance, skills, and engagement, that really resonated for us, because a lot of the strategy around learning started in the compliance environment. We're pharmaceutical, we're heavily regulated. We need to make sure that we're able to provide learning solutions that kind of cover all of those needs. So we kind of kicked off the transformation around that sort of question of learning management system. And we're not as large as Nestle. We're over 100,000 employees, also global presence, and had more than 40 systems. So it was, we really had a problem.
More than 40 LMS systems, if I recall.
More than 40 LMS systems, and even just the LMS systems probably covered around 25 to 30% of our learning. So we're uncovering daily new sources that hold learning. So a lot of it kind of kicked off in that compliance space, but
it's also a business case of centralization, right?
Exactly, absolutely. But the other piece that started to kind of layer on top of this compliance question was the skills question. How are we building capability for today and for the future? And then the third layer, and that kind of really came to life with our purpose, which is empowering life, where we started really focusing on empowering people. And learning is at the core of how you empower people, whether it's about their careers, their personal preferences, the way they grow. So actually, it was the convergence of those 3 things that have allowed us to not just start with the LMS, but really think more holistically about how we want our learning to evolve towards the future. So that's kind of been where it started and how we're thinking about the next step.
No, phenomenal. And Bart, in your environment, obviously Saint-Gobain is also a very large organization with very different businesses, and you've been spearheading the digital learning mission there. Can you elaborate a little bit on how that resonates in your organization and your learning strategies at Saint-Gobain?
Sure. So my name is Bart Schutt, and I'm the digital director. I'm the Director of Digital Learning at Saint-Gobain. Saint-Gobain is a provider of products and solutions in the construction and industrial sectors business. My background is IT, so I spent 22 years doing new technology consulting before joining Saint-Gobain in 2003. And I joined them in the IT organization, and it was in 2011 that they asked me to take on this role within learning. So I came in not knowing anything about L&D or learning, and together with my colleague Charlène Bernot, we looked at what we were doing and, more importantly, where we thought we ought to be going. And it was a time when we were seeing an explosion in content, lots of new modalities and formats for learning. And so we put together a plan for how we wanted to, our vision for where we thought learning was going to go. But fundamental to that was we were at that time largely an order-taking business. We were taking orders for classroom learning, we were taking orders for digital learning. And what I was saying to my boss was, we can have the best catalog in the world, but if people don't have a culture of learning, then we're not going to achieve any business change. And so the big thing that we had to achieve was to create this culture of digital learning. And we've done a number of things in that area. That problem we perceived back in 2011, and I think Adam touched on it today, it's become far more compelling and important today than it was before, especially around digital transformation. I have on my wall a list of 15 topics that are important to our businesses. Hard topics like robotics and Industry 4.0 and AI, softer topics such as agility, customer focus, and things like that. But these are critical topics, and I need to enable learning in all of them for 3 key segments of our population. Those people who are experts, who want to either maintain their expertise or develop initial expertise. General managers who need to understand what these digital transformation topics can, what the fundamentals of them are, but also how they can be used to transform their business, because they have to decide, well, am I going to invest in artificial intelligence, or am I going to invest in customer focus? So we need to be sharing examples of what's working and what's not working. And then I have the general population of people who are just interested in these different topics. And as you said, we are a very diverse organization, 180,000 employees. We were created 353 years ago, so a very strong culture. And so there are very few solutions that apply to everybody. And so what I need is to create a pull capability within the organization where people understand why they need to learn in the way that Adam was describing, know how to learn, and that our LMS is sort of the key piece for kicking off that whole learning journey.
And I remember that some clients in the audience, I hope all of you have turned on by now the learning experience platform and the learning system, but I know that some clients were saying, well, we want to go step by step, division by division. You chose a different approach.
Yeah, we did. This is sort of, I guess, in the culture that Charlotte and I have, which is, take no prisoners, go quickly. We saw Learner Home, and we said, this is excellent. This is what we want. The customer experience is fundamental. And we just immediately said, well, we're going to go big bang. I think we did it about a year ago in December. But what we did was we created a 10-minute video that introduced, it was really a relaunch of the platform for us. It was an opportunity to really remind people of what our LMS could do. And so we created this 10-minute video demonstrating all of the features. It was very succinct, even though 10 minutes. And then we translated into something like 17 different languages. And then it was all launched on one day. The feedback was fantastic. People loved it. And of course, by doing Big Bang, everybody was now talking about the same thing at the same time. It was very successful.
And I recall that you also flagged that, to me, when we introduced playlists, I didn't fully realize the implication business-wise this had. And I think for you, you see a lot of potential and success on the playlist front.
Absolutely. It comes back to some of the things that we're doing to drive this culture of learning. And so one of which is to empower the employees to share what it is they know. And playlists, I've been waiting for playlists for years because I believe very strongly in expert-driven curation. And so we are now working with our different experts on artificial intelligence and other areas to train them in how to use the playlist feature, which is not hard at all, and then to encourage them to go out and curate best content so that they can make it available to other people. I think that's going to have a huge impact. Other things that are having a big impact are employee-created content. And so we are pushing people to share their knowledge through videos and uploading them to the platform. The other thing that we decided back in 2011 was, if we want to create a real culture of learning, we have to make sure that everything we do is excellent. Unfortunately for most people, the first learning that they ever do in an enterprise is the compliance training, right? And if your company is like ours, the compliance training was just death by 1,000 cuts. And the one thing people retained from it was corporate learning is punishment, right? And so we finally convinced management to redo this program called Comply, and we really set the bar high. We wanted it to be outstanding. And so we decided to make it as a movie about a dawn raid at Saint-Gobain because of some compliance infraction. We brought in a cinematographer with which we'd worked for many years, professional actors, and it was filmed in our location. And we launched that, and the feedback has been fantastic. And we still get directors telling us that it was great. And to our great satisfaction, it recently won a Sagos Learning Excellence Award.
Congratulations.
Which is fantastic. And the result is we now have all of these employees who say, wow, learning can really be transformational. I want one of those. That's huge.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Well done. And Celia, in terms of how you're leveraging technology to impact your strategy, and then Jean-Christophe will go with the same question. You want to elaborate a little bit on some examples?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess I would kind of build on the idea of, at the core, really it being about the experience. So a lot of our focus is how do we shift from a lot of the traditional compliance training approach and a lot of face-to-face training, which also happens in pharma, to really exploding the experience. And that way, the types of things that we're doing are focused around content. So let's look more at content curation than content creation, and how we're smarter about using technology in that space.
Yeah, for you that was an important point, right? To get the teams to wrestle around the question and think it through around what content should be proprietary and what content should not be.
Yeah,
and that was an important.
And one of the kind of unofficial rules we're starting to apply is, let's use our systems and our technology in the right way for our proprietary content, and not for the stuff that we can just plug and use because it's free, because it's available, or because we license it. So let's use our resources in the right place. But we've also had some experiments with technology with VR and AR. So for example, reducing the amount of time for training an operator through to them actually being able to get on the machinery, on the equipment, by using virtual reality. And we've also had some good successes with starting to use technology differently in the onboarding, beyond the compliance, using social learning and social connections to help people feel connected to the organization as soon as they join. So those are the focus is really about the experience going forward.
Okay, very, very good examples. And Jean-Christophe, obviously at Nestlé, I'm sure there's a lot of experiments and also a lot of leverage of technology across the group. Can you share some examples?
Yeah, I mean, just getting started with the basics, learning management solution. If you think about, we have on our LMS, on Cornerstone, 280,000 employees being registered. And in average, I mean, by year, we have 80,000 access. We have 16,000 e-learning solutions being embarked, more than 50,000 classroom courses, and last year I think we organized 90,000 classrooms.
Now, when we talk about scale, that's scale.
So when we talk about at large scale, the importance of getting the basics right so that you can really coordinate and get the best. Now, I mean, if we think also about what mobile enable, Aspart and Celia could talk about the same. We have, due to our healthcare type of businesses or infant formula businesses, our people, I mean, we have thousands and thousands of people who spend a hell of time in the doctor waiting room. And how do we leverage a doctor waiting room so that it's become a learning environment? Yeah, and because of that, I mean, you need to make sure that people have iPad, iPhone, and they can learn while they wait. Otherwise, it's time wasted. Also, it's about, making sure that we can reach more, and thanks to virtual classroom, blended technologies. I just take an example. Last year, we started piloting a virtual leadership course for first-time line manager. And really leveraging on technologies, leveraging on virtual mentoring, leveraging on virtual classes. And we decided, let's start small with 50 people. So 50 participants from all over the world. We got, tremendous positive feedback. So we said, let's go for the next round. And late last year, early this year, we ran one. We had 250 participants for a course over 16 weeks. And we said, wow, that's great. Can we go one step further? And as we speak, we have 870 participants going through an interactive leadership learning course, very experiential way. We combine, talk, thanks to virtual classroom, but also activities and projects which are done on the ground. So technology will be really there, to help us moving forward and to really accelerate our learning agility.
That's a phenomenal example, because I think it's an example where technology unites with the human factor. So you're combining both in one program. We were talking earlier about how we don't want to lose the human factor with all this digital transformation. And in fact, we want to leverage technology in a way that still, encourages it and even fosters it even more. Well, with that, I'd like to ask for a big round of applause for our panelists here. What you all achieve is amazing. Congratulations.